And that is what I love about it. How people come in as strangers and ends up as family. That smile on their face while they're eating the food. And I love it. That's among the reasons why my restaurant, I always love an open kitchen. I have an open kitchen because I want to see the face of my guest.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Finding the right venues to work at and the right mentors to learn from can help pave the way for a hell of a career in food. But how do you find those opportunities? What options are out there to get the ball rolling and work on the art of great hospitality? Caleb Azuka is the chef and owner of Restaurant Caleb and Caleb's Culinary Foundation. Caleb, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's nice to be here.
It's great to get you on the show. You've been very busy over there in WA. How are things over there at the moment?
We still, as you know, we're in winter here, but WA is beautiful. Sometimes we have like two seasons at the same time. You have the cold and you have a summer at the same time. And today is a beautiful day in Western Australia, beautiful weather, and in the food scene, everything is going great. So we're slowly recovering back from COVID.
You've got your restaurant Caleb, but you also have Caleb's Culinary Foundation, where you give people a chance to sort of learn the skills and the art of hospitality. You tell us a little bit about that Culinary Foundation.
Okay, so Caleb Culinary Foundation is something that I created years ago, and slowly I'm making it to stand fit on its own. So the reason why I created that was the fact that sometimes I see a lot of young ones, and they end up on the street sometimes, sadly to say. Like, I was working in this restaurant, and there was this, before I owned mine, there was this young kid, and I wanted to employ him, but the owners of the restaurant wouldn't, because it's just a kid on the street trying to find his way. But I'm like, I wish I could create something someday that could help people like him to be able to take care of themselves. Because like today, I'm a chef. I own my own restaurant and my other businesses, and I can take care of my family and my lifestyle because I can cook. And so I believe if I can equip anyone with a skill to cook, it doesn't matter, they don't have to spend many years in school. If I can equip them with a skill to cook, they can be able to take care of themselves and their loved ones, and they don't have to be on the street anymore. And that is what inspired me to open Caleb Culinary Foundation, that trains young ones to be able to have the necessary skills to be able to work either in the front house as a bartender, or as a server, or as a barista making coffee, or behind in the kitchen as a chef, or prepping food, or as a cook, or whatever they love to do in the hospitality industry. And so far we've been able to train so far about 10 young ones that are at the moment working in different venues now, running different venues now. And I'm just proud of that the foundation was able to do that in a short time.
The foundation was created to help young people and create career paths, but what sort of impact has it had on you doing that?
Doing that, I have gained to have like a lot of people that are now not just friends or strangers to me, that are now like family to me. And I remember a few months ago, I was really sick. I was in the hospital for a little bit. And during this period, I was worried, what is going to happen to my restaurant and all of that? Because apart from my restaurant and the foundation, I also own Caleb Specialities that does like spices and sauces. And helps to create my wine brand too, my private label wine brand. And I was worried how all of that is going to run. But when these people here, about what is going on with me, they all jumped in. They're like, what can we do? When I recover and get back to work, I'm like, everything was running smoothly. I'm like, like I was not needed. I'm like, I can't believe it. And that is why at this moment, like Caleb Culinary Foundation, after what happened, that happened in January or February this year, I was like, you know what? Formerly the foundation was only about 20 young ones and all of that. I'm like, you know what? I can now invest my time to even be able to cook for the public and feed the public. And as I'm speaking to you, as of last month, Caleb Culinary Foundation does not just train people anymore. It also, like today, from 12:30 today, we're gonna start feeding the homeless or the people that are unable or struggling families here in around Western Australia, like within the suburb we can reach. Anyone from 12:30 is welcome to come to my restaurant if they're struggling, and we cook for them for free. And sometimes, like today, I might not be there to be able to do it. Now, thanks to that foundation, I have a lot of people that have grown up through this foundation and they're doing good, that are now stepping in and they're running it for me without me being there. So it doesn't matter if I'm here in Australia, if anything happens to me, the foundation is going to keep cooking for the disadvantaged. And I have chefs that I've trained now that are also helping me in training these younger people or other people to be able to do the same thing.
Wow, that's incredible. What does it take to put together the sort of meals and all of the infrastructure to be able to cook and create these meals for the disadvantaged?
So what I did was to talk to some of my suppliers, and I have a good relationship with my suppliers. If you ask any supplier, food supplier in Western Australia about me, they know me. I have good relationship with them, and once a year, I normally do this where I invite all my suppliers, and they bring some of their own wines or whatever they're doing. If they're doing seafood, like festival fish, they bring the seafood. If they're doing wine, they bring their wine. Whatever it is they supply, they all bring it. We all cook it, and we invite some of the people in like some of the people in the community and all around, and everyone just come. We eat. I call it the celebration of life and success, and we just eat and drink. And it's also a way for them to network and get to know other restaurant owners and other suppliers to come together. So when I was doing this, I reached out to some of them. Some of them like, oh, I'm gonna donate this. The other one's like, I'm gonna donate that. And I go to my local store here in Subiaco, and I'm like, hey, if you guys have anything before it really goes off, and you guys are not gonna sell it, can I please have that? It doesn't matter what it is, I'll create something with it. So each week we create different food based on what we can get from our suppliers and from the local stores. And I use that in my kitchen, and I and my chefs, we just create up new dishes, new stuff, and we feed the public. And then the rest of the food, we put in takeaway containers, and we just drive all around Perth, CBD, and around Subiaco, here I am, and we just distribute that all around.
Wow. You've had a fascinating life. I want to explore sort of what you're doing with Restaurant Caleb as we move forward. But take us back to when you were young. Where did you grow up, and what sort of role did food play in your family?
So originally, I was born in Nigeria, West Africa, and the region in Nigeria where I was born is a region that is the Igbos. They are known for tasty food. As a matter of fact, my mom used to say, "Oh, the region that I was born and raised, that if a woman doesn't know how to cook, that normally the man will marry another wife." It's a grant for divorce back then, many years ago. If a woman doesn't know how to cook, or if someone doesn't know how to cook, I'm like, I can't believe it. And now, if I should bring it back home now at home, so most time I'm the one that cook for my wife. My wife doesn't love to cook. I'm like, woman, I have grounds to divorce you if you keep like this, but. But that was many years ago. Now I prefer to cook for my woman than for her. And so growing up I grew up in Nigeria at an early age, 7, 8, 9, my family relocated to Italy, because my dad have some Italian, a little bit of Italian background. So that helped him to relocate. He wanted to find more about his ancestors that he believed moved to Nigeria many years ago to start up the Catholic Church and all of that in West Africa, Nigeria. And so he moved to Italy, and he found a little bit to learn this poly in Italy. He found a little bit about his grandma, and then after that he decided to move to Modena, which is close to Bologna in Emilia Romagna, so which is where I grew up, in Emilia Romagna in Bologna. So growing up in Bologna, there was this family that took us in. Like, to me, she was like a grandma to me. and she also loved to cook so much. She even have a little trattoria. It's like a little family restaurant, and there I learned from her. I used to call her Nonna till she passed away in 2011, and after she passed away was when I started going more crazy with my traveling of all around the world. So I learned from her more about Italian cuisine, and now bringing that together with my Nigerian heritage, which is where you have to make every food taste very good. So I kind of mix those two together, and which is where if you come to my restaurant, no anyone can complain. Oh, let me say there was a lot of we couldn't take care of the booking or the reservation, but no one can ever complain about the food not being tasty enough. It's impossible. It's impossible. Even though, even my friends on my social media, they will say the same thing. If anyone complain about the food not being tasty, no, the person didn't come to the right restaurant. I think it's a different restaurant, not to kill them. So, yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about your nonna. Was there any sort of dishes, or did you spend time with her in the kitchen? And can you tell us about that time?
Yes, I spend a lot of time. So normally after school, most time after school, other case in Italy, we normally go to play in the park, which is we normally play soccer. And all the kids, as school finishes, let me say around 1, 2 o'clock, and every kids you eat quickly, you run to the park and you start playing soccer. But instead of that, I most time prefer to be in the kitchen with her to learn a little bit more about the cooking, because I just love the smell and I just love to see everything she was doing and all of that. And so I learned from her the love of food. When she's cooking, she's always singing some song or humming some song, which is why I love music when I'm cooking. Like I cannot cook without music must be playing. So in order to enjoy that was among the reason why even in my restaurant here I have an open kitchen. So in that way I can hear the beautiful music playing for my guests while I'm still cooking, so I can enjoy it like them. So she loves to cook, and she cook traditional Italian cuisine, which is why I grew up learning the traditional Italian cuisine. Even though in my restaurant today I cook my version of Italian cuisine, but tradition is always the foundation of my cooking. So that is still in me the love to cook. But originally, when I started in my career, I was doing. To be honest, I was doing music, and I was also cooking as hobby and as a side stuff while studying to become an IT, because I love computers too. Like I was starting to do that. Then at a certain point of my life, I'm like, you know what? I really love food. Is who I am, and is my way of expressing myself more. So I decided to go on full on with food and to study more about it. And I just switched off other things to focus on my culinary career. And I finished with a high score in my city. And when you finish with that, you're normally privileged to work with the top chefs in your city. So, but unfortunately, I couldn't get straight on to work with these top chefs in my city. I had to work with, because back then in Italy, you were having fun. There was like, that is when the financial crisis hit, like 2007, 2008. You have the financial crisis in Italy. So I was working with an agency. At first, I didn't love that idea, but thinking about it after so many years, I really love it, because the agency, it's called the CP Cooperativa. That was many years ago, 2007, 2008. And I was working with this agency, and they just send you all around to different restaurants or to different food manufacturing company, which you call like alimentari, and you just work there. So you're not contracted by by the restaurants or the food factories. You contracted by the agency. So in that way, they send us all around to different places to work, and yeah, so that gave me the ability I can go to any kitchen and I'll feel comfortable to work, thanks to that experience of working in different places, being sent to different places to work. Like today, I own a food manufacturing business that makes spices. I even have my own wine brand on it. And why? Because I worked during that process in a food manufacturing company, and they loved me. They kept requesting for me, and I worked there for a period of time even though under the agency. And that food manufacturing company is called Menu. I think they're still existing till today in San Felice Supanaro in Modena, Italy. And they're still existing till today. I worked there for a while, and from them I learned how to learn about packaging, how to learn about all of that, the packaging from the beginning to the start of it, which is why it was easy for me to open my own manufacturing to make spices and all of that. And I'm grateful to all those experience that built me up while growing up in Italy.
These days, you're mentoring young people, as we talked about at the top of the show. But tell us about when you were sort of applying your craft. Who were the really important people that helped carve a path for you?
For me, there was a few, but among the top of all was Maximo Bottura in Modena, next to Bologna. My dad worked next over there, so he told me about there. So I couldn't directly get in, but once again, thanks to the cooperativa that I was saying, I was fortunate a few times to be sent there, and I just loved. That was the most growing up. Then I worked in different places, but that was the most coolest place that I ever worked. The way everything was planned, the way everything was organized, the way everything was like, it was like a different world to me. It's like it was so different. So from there, I saw the art of realizing that it's true back then in Italy. Before technology, all of everything just went crazy recently. But back in Italy, life was a little bit. Italian food was all about pasta on the plate, lots of pasta, lots of meat. Just eat yourself. There wasn't so much about presentation. I mean, the flavors were there and all of that, but there wasn't the presentation. And then Massimo Bottura was among the first few that took Italian food to a different way of plating. So, which is why that opened my mind to realize, hey, you don't have to, it's not just about a tasty food chucked on the plate. The food needs to look colorful. The food needs to tell a story. The food has to represent something, a journey, and which is among the reason why if you look on my social media, or if you come to my restaurant, my food is not just about this is ravioli is on the plate or this is a gnocchi is on the plate. It's colorful, it's beautiful, it tells a story, it talks about my journey around the world, cooking all around the world. And Maximo Bottura was one of them, which impacted me even down to this day. And another one of them was this chef in France. He wasn't that big, Chef Tommaso, but I worked with him in Marseille. He was really great. He was French Italian, and he helped me a lot when it comes to the art of plating. So not just looking beautiful, not just tasty, but when it comes to the arts, like art of plating of, and also a combination of Italian and French coming together to form something unique. Then I moved to the United States. There was Michael Bologna. Man, he was old school Italian. Oh my God. He was like a soldier. Walking there was like I was in the military camp. It was different. You cannot be late. You have to come at least 30 minutes before your arrival time. Your chef coat must be ironed, must be clean. You're walking proud of what you're doing, not just working in like another day in something, but you have to be happy about what you're doing. So I learned discipline from Michael Bologna, and I learned consistency, discipline, and attention to details from Michael Bologna. So I remember back then, like nowadays in Australia, I'll give you a typical example. Let me say someone is working in the kitchen with you and he's doing something wrong and you just hate him. What are you doing? Because of fight, he'll be like, oh my God, he'll start crying, you start crying. Next minute, you're being reported to fair work and all of that. So you can do that. But back in Michael Bologna's restaurant in Woodstock, Georgia, in Vincenzo, where I was working, this guy will hit you, be like, what are you doing? You can't do that. No, what are you doing? Think. So I learned to be tough. I learned to be disciplined. I learned to be proud of what I'm doing and consistency in what I'm doing, and to really, really love what you're doing and to stand up for it from Michael Bologna. And then there was Chef Piero. Chef Piero, from him, I learned food is like, it's like almost like royalty. cooking. So when you're cooking and you're cooking for the right people, that it takes you to a whole different level of life. So, and Chef Pierre is still there in Preachy in Atlanta, Georgia, down to this day. And the restaurant is Preachy. I worked with him. I learned from him. Not for so long. He was more of a mentor to me than the place where I work. He was trying to mentor me to become, because he said he believed he could see potential in me, and he wanted to build that love gently in a loving way. And Chef Piero helped me to realize if I do the job and dedicate myself to it, I could be cooking for celebrities, government official, top people, and all of that. And back then, I remember he was cooking for the likes like Usher, the musicians, and the Italian ambassador, prime ministers of Italy when they come to the United States in Atlanta. He was cooking for them. He invited me just to make me understand, to be proud, and to appreciate that cooking is something everyone would love from any level of life, and which have shaped me down to this day to be proud of what I'm doing. I take pride to be a chef, and I give my best to it. And he was right about it, because today, like few weeks ago, last week ago, we cooked for our new premiere of Western Australia, and a few days ago, we were cooking for some celebrities from Africa with over 10 million on Instagram. They love it. They say it was the best food they've ever eaten, to the point they even following me on my Instagram. They invited me now to come to Africa to do cooking shows for them. And I can't believe it. And I'm like, Chef Piero, you're right about it. You're right that when I love what I'm doing, give my best to it, do it because I love it. Don't think about the reward. Someday you will be cooking. Like I was chilling behind the stage with this celebrity with 10 million followers that people paid, driving with him in his car when he was in Perth. Why? Because he loved my food. And food is something I would tell everyone, if you know what you're doing and you love it, you're doing it not for the money, and you're doing it because you love it, it will take you a whole long way. Believe me.
How did you end up in Australia?
Oh man, Australian woman. Australian woman. I met my wife when I was back in the United States. And in the United States, I won, it was this award, Chef Extraordinaire, that I won I won the first one back in 2015. And being a renowned chef or award-winning chef in the United States is different from Australia. When you win there in the United States, because there's so many chefs, so many restaurants, and the United States is quite vast and big. So when you win that, that's explode, that like people keep talking about it. And so winning that and being among the few rare, I should say, African Italian back then in the United States. So everyone was just talking about this new kid that grew up in Italy, originally from Africa, and he just won these awards. And so after winning that, it put me out there, and I started doing like cooking shows. Like during the summer, I cook in my managers took care of it. I cook in different states. So I did a show in Atlanta, Georgia, and my partner then, she came as one of the guests to watch it. And then when I went to Florida she also came to it. And then my manager's like, hey, there's this beautiful girl that's been coming to your show. She came to Atlanta. Now she's here. She loves what you're doing. She's visiting from Australia, from the record we have on the people that bought the ticket. Just come say hello to her. Then I used to be so grumpy. I'm like, nah, I don't want, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. And he's like, come on, just say hi. What is it going to cost you? I came out to say hi. I saw how beautiful she is. I'm like, Mama Mia, do you want to learn how to make a mozzarella? So from making the mozzarella, we end up getting married in a venue that I was running back then in the States called Zola Italian in Milton, Georgia. And we end up getting married there in less than a year. We got married in 2015, in November 2015. And then after we got married, I was applying for her green card and all of that. And she's like, I'm going back home. I'm like, cause I teach you. What do you mean you're going back home? Like, this is your home. I'm already applying for your papers, girl. And she's like, no, you guys are crazy. Everyone is carrying a gun and all of that. Australia is different. No one is carrying a gun. It's more safe. If you're going to have kids, we can't have kids in the country here. It's not this safe. And I thought she was joking. She came back to Australia. She's a personal trainer and a very good one. And when she came back, I'm like, oh, who doesn't love America? Give her a few months, she's going to come back to the States. So I gave her 3 months, 4 months, she didn't come back. And then I saw she was chatting with one of her old friend that is also a personal trainer. And this guy is bigger than me. I'm like, dude, you gotta go get your woman. So I came to Australia to come get my woman, and that was my first time in Australia. I'm like, wow, it's really different, you know. It's as they call it the Aussie way, take it easy, you know. So everyone was taking it easy. In America, it's like go 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 go, you know. You have to be at the brain. You always have to level up, showing off to people that you don't even know. And it's right here, you can wear a flip flop or slippers and walk around the street, and no one cares who you are. And I love that about Western Australia, how you could be yourself and you could be real. And so I end up staying here instead of convincing her. I end up staying here and applied for, as a matter of fact, about a year ago, I became a citizen and I took to become an Australian. And so far, I'm loving it, thanks to her. Yeah, it was the best decision with COVID that happened, and all of that was the best decision I ever did, moving from the States to here.
Well, there's a lot of people loving the fact that you're here as well. Tell us a little bit about Restaurant Caleb, and is there a dish or two you can talk about that sort of exemplifies your food?
Yeah, so when I opened Restaurant Caleb, I was just thinking, because before that I had a different restaurant called the Corner Italian. But the Corner Italian, I realized I was trying to please everyone. I was just doing what everyone was doing, traditional Italian, marinara, mussels, and all of that, which there's nothing wrong with that. Carbonara and amatriciana, they are all traditional Italian cooking. There's nothing wrong with that. But that wasn't me, though. Me, I travel all around the world. Me is made up of Africa, Nigeria, tasty. Me is made up of Italy, which is the foundation of my cooking. Me is made up of the France, the United States, traveling to Puerto Rico, Costa Rica. All of that shaped who I am, and those experiences shaped who I am. I travel all around the world to see how different countries cook Italian cuisine, so I could pick the best of that to create me. So when I was doing those dishes, even though everyone loved it and everything, but I wasn't true to myself. It was like I was throwing away who I am. So when I opened Restaurant Caleb, I told myself this restaurant, which is why I gave it my name. I didn't give it any kind of name. I gave it my name, and I wanted to represent my life, my journey, my story. So my food is based on the country I am and allowing all the countries I have been through to influence that. It's still Italian, but it's my version of Italian cuisine based on my trip around the world. And one of those dishes that speaks about that, for example, is my burrata, which they call the famous burrata because everyone talks about it and loves it. So my burrata, I create that, make using fresh milk, pasteurized milk from here in Western Australia, and with using non-animal rennets, I turn that into a mozzarella ball, and then after that, I stuff that with mascarpone cheese from Puglia, Italy, and Puglia is known to make the best mascarpone on the planet. I stuff that with mascarpone cheese from Puglia, Italy, and then I infuse that with truffle honey from Margaret River. So now it's like bringing the best of Italy and the best of Australia, Western Australia, which is truffle honey in Margaret River, is Mamma Mia. It's so good. It's so delicious. So bringing those two together, stuffing that into this mozzarella ball, and then I tie it with my signature. In the United States, I'm known to always tie my burrata with leek, which was how I won my first award. It's like my signature around the world. So I tie it with my blanched salted leek, which is the grain that represents earth, freshness. With that, why I do that is when you make the burrata, it stays in the fridge in the cold water for a few days. When the leek changes color, that means that burrata is not fresh. And that means my customers could know it's not fresh. So that tells me, hey, that leek almost have to look green, represent earth, fresh. So that means every time I serve that, it represents that freshness. My guests can see that it's fresh and it's made. And so that's how I make my burrata ball. It's almost like a flower. The top of it, I twist the top of it so it looks almost like a flower blooming up, like new beginning, new era. And then I put that on a plate that is designed with black and white, which represents different cultures uniting together. So white truffle cream, and then 24 years old balsamic vinegar from Modena, demarcating the burrata just on the center of that. And when you call that, you mix all of that together, and on the white cream you have a basil dot emulsion, 3 dots of basil emulsion, and 3 dots of paprika oil emulsion. And those two represent the cultures I come from, which is a little bit spicy, which is the paprika, and the green representing outness, freshness, planet Earth. So my dishes are about my life, they're about my story, and people love it. One of my guests 2 years ago tried that dish when I newly opened my restaurant. That was when we were just sorry, a year ago they tried it. That was when we were just opened up before COVID, before we get to the complete lockdown during COVID. And one of my guests just tried it, and he's from Singapore. He really really loved it. So when he went back to Singapore, he loved it. So he owned a restaurant. Back then, I didn't even know he even owned a restaurant. He sent me an invitation to come to Singapore and to cook that dishes. And he was connected with the Australian High Commissioner in Singapore. And I cooked that for 50 people in one of his restaurants in Singapore. It's called Spruce Restaurant. And there was all of these official, all of these people, which now they're all friends. We all speak on social media. They're inviting me again to come this year in September. I'm still seeing if I can make it. They love the burrata so much that I have to go to Singapore to teach the team over there, his restaurant, how to make my burrata. And every year they buy the truffle here from Western Australia, from David Kuma in Manjimup. They buy the truffle and they take it to Singapore so that they can, like they did it late last year, so that they could make the burrata the same way that I make it using my truffle honey. And that is just an example of how good that people love. People love it. If I was doing the traditional Italian burrata, which you can find everywhere, which is just salt and stracciatella and inside the mozzarella ball, nothing wrong with that. It's not gonna make a difference, but because I was being true to myself and creating my version, that's the reason why I and my team we flew to Singapore, put in the best hotel, treated like royalties, that I didn't want to come back to Perth anymore because I love the treatment. For just a burrata, and we have to do a degustation. So I'm like, I'm not just gonna come to just do a burrata for you guys. I have to do a whole degustation. So you end up doing 5 course degustation, and guess what? The whole wine we use all came from Western Australia. So I went to all the winemakers from Gabin Estates. I went to Gabin Estate. I took some of their wine. They're a beautiful family making wines for a while now. Their legacy in Western Australia. I used their wine and I export that to Singapore. I took some of my own wine, export all of that to Singapore, and we use Western Australian wine for this big event. Just an example of how one dish changed people and what it results, which is why I encourage everyone, even me myself, to keep being you when you're cooking. Don't try to be anyone. Be you, but learn from the best people, and then you be you, and you'll be fine. And and another dish is the ragu australiana, which normally in Italy, when making a ragu, you use just pork and beef. But the problem with that is, which everyone will tell you, it can be very fatty because you use pork shoulder and beef and all of that. The dish can be very fatty and oily. So what I do, I infuse mine. In Australia, what's Australia known for? Kangaroo. I add a little bit of kangaroo to that, and we cook it on a low heat for about 8 to 10 hours with some rosemary, fresh basil, and all of that in a good fresh tomato sauce. We bake it in the oven. After that, we finish it in the wood fire oven for a few more minutes so the rusticness of the wood can get into the sauce. And after that, we shred everything down together. But the beautiful thing is the leanness of the kangaroo balance the fatness of the beef and the pork, so you don't have the fattiness anymore. And that's why I call the dish ragu australiana, which means Australian ragu, because we have kangaroo in it.
The first 8 years of your life was spent in Nigeria. Have you explored Nigerian food professionally as well?
Professionally, at the moment, I know it's okay. I can say it because it's regardless, it's gonna be there. As of last year, after my last award, someone contacted me from they make series of most of this. She showed me her content. Most of the stuff we see on Channel 9, Channel 10, some of the TV series. She's the one that her company created it, and she contacted me and she says she want to explore what being me is, my heritage, everything. So and the African cuisine. So, and she believed that after doing it, she can be able to air it out to one of the big TV station. So it's all about African cuisine, but the Aussie way for Africans in Australia that that are cooking their traditional food, but they cannot find the ingredients here, but they're using Australian produce to create African cuisine, which has been happening at home. I cook African cuisine sometimes because I want my kids to know about their traditional food, not just pasta, not just pasta and all of that. Which there's nothing wrong with that, but I also want them to start home and cook African so my kids can understand. My friends or my celebrity friends that travels all the way from Africa to perform here in Australia, I cook African cuisine for them because my parents make sure of that we know about African cuisine. So I can cook that, but not professionally like in my restaurant. But there's about 2 or 3 restaurants right now in Western Australia that are doing African cuisine, and most of them, like out of the 2 or 3 of them, I've dined at some of these places. I helped them when they were opening. They opened less than a year ago. I helped them out and showed them how to balance it out a little bit with everything. And the show that we're gonna be doing soon is gonna be about these restaurants and showing how to use Australian produce to create African cuisine. Once again, is a combination of Australia, and for the first time, we're gonna be creating African Australian cuisine, which it doesn't exist. So yes, we're exploring at the moment. I'm exploring African cuisine and trying to understand it more than what I already know, and now trying to find a way to create it, to bring that. Like we have, like for example, we have French Italian, we have Asian infused Italian, and all of that. Like my food in my restaurant is a combination of Australian, Asian, and Italian coming together, and American and African to create something unique, even though it's more of Italian. So for the first time, we're gonna be having African, real African food, but now in Australian westernized version of it. So, which is something never done before, but I'm already working on that. It's something planned for the future, and that I'm so excited about. And the TV show is also going to be bringing more about that. Like for example, Hitch, if I should tell you okra, for example, if you go to the store, you see okra. And some of us don't know how to cook okra, but there's an African cuisine that shows you how to cook that beautiful vegetable, the okra, as a soup, and you eat it with a dumpling, and it's so delicious. And look out for the show. You're gonna be seeing that it's called Africa the Aussie way. So it's gonna be coming up soon. Hopefully in less than a year, it should be airing, and it's gonna be how to showcase, how to help fellow Australians to celebrate the African cuisine and see how they can play around with the food that is vegetables they see in the local stores, how to play around with it to create something unique. So yeah.
Well, Caleb, you're doing such extraordinary things. What do you love about what you do?
Honestly, what I love so much about this is how people coming into my life. Like every night I see different people. Like tonight I have a cooking class at my restaurant. It's different faces, different people, and at first they come in as strangers, and when they are leaving, after we share some bread, we have some wine and all of that, they are leaving no more as strangers. They are leaving as friends. And after they come a couple of times, they get to know me better. I get to know them better. They become family. And that is what I love about it. How people come in as strangers and ends up as family. That smile on their face while they're eating the food. And I love it. That's among the reason why my restaurant, I always love an open kitchen. I have an open kitchen because I want to see the face of my guests. There's no demarcation like any blinds, any glasses separating me from my guests. Now I want them to see me. I want them to see the action, and I want to see their face as they're eating it. And if sometimes, I give an example, some guests don't like spicy, some love spicy. Let me say, I see some guests from their facial expression, I can understand how they're feeling about the food. So I would just come out of my kitchen, walk to the table. Hey, how you doing? How is the food? Be honest to me. I just want to know, how do you like it? And they're like, oh, I would like a little bit of more chili to it. It's not spicy enough. Or I would like a little bit of more this to it. I'm like, yeah, it's not a problem. Give it to me. I'll take it back. I'll make it for you. They're like, are you sure? I'm like, watch me. Or you can watch me. You can come closer even to the come close and watch me do it for you. And they come closer and I do it. That just creates a bond. And I feel like my guests love me not because of how tasty the food is or any of that. Is because of the personal connection that I have with them. Like, I remember the first time, for example, the premier of my, back then he wasn't the premier, he was the Minister of Tourism for Western Australia, came to my restaurant. I didn't even know who he was. I didn't know who the Minister of Tourism was, but because of the treatment that I gave him, he gave me his card, introduced himself. I'm like, oh, wow, thank you so much. And then we became like friends. And now he's the premier. But imagine that I didn't care who he is. Now he won't be dining at my restaurant. I was the first restaurant he dined after he became the premier. Like, I wouldn't have that relationship with them. The same with the other people that comes to my restaurant. I wouldn't know what is happening, that families are really struggling, if I didn't speak to my guests. Hey, how's it going? I've been seeing you for a while. How's your son? How's he going? And like, oh, he's struggling a little bit. I'm like, you know what? That's among the reasons why I opened to start cooking for the disadvantaged and encouraging other chefs to join me, which at the moment I have different chefs joining me, and I'm encouraging them not just to come here to join me, but to do that in their own suburbs. So in that way, if they can take care of their own suburb, and I take care of my own suburb, and we all take care of our own suburb, we end up making sure that no one in the Western Australian suburb is going to bed hungry. And that is my goal, and that is my dream, and that's what I love about the industry, how you can impart people through food, and they can become a lifetime friendship with people through your cooking. That's just what I love about it.
Well, Caleb, it's extraordinary what you're doing. It's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear just a part of your story. Please keep in touch, and we'd love to catch up again soon.
Thank you so much. It's really an honour. Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.